Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our first ever online University of North Dakota Women for Philanthropy event. I am so excited to be here with you today. My name is Sarah Proud. I'm the Associate Vice President of Engagement and a proud UND graduate class of 2007. Women for Philanthropy brings women together to embrace philanthropy while strengthening their connection to each other and the University of North Dakota. We do that through socials, luncheons, and networking opportunities for women like you. I wanted to run through a couple of housekeeping items before we get started today. You're currently all placed on mute, so if you want to ask a question throughout today's event, you can do so by using the Q&A button located on the bottom middle of your screen. Shoot any questions, concerns, comments that you may have, and we'll try to get to them towards the end of today's event. Moving on, like I said, this is our first ever online event, and as always, we have some very special guests and inspirational women on hand. Today's topic is Your Why Matters, and I am so excited to hear from our guests about their reasons for giving back in their own philanthropic efforts. First up to introduce our guest is my boss and someone I and many others look up to as a strong female leader and philanthropic visionary. CEO of the UND Alumni Association and Foundation, Deanna Carlson-Zink. Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah, and good afternoon, everyone. I am so excited to have you all joining us this afternoon. Thank you for being here. I know we're all feeling a little bit zoomed out these days, so it really does mean a lot for you to make the commitment to be here with us. Thank you. Before we get started, I have one special guest that I'd like to introduce, and that is UND's First Lady, Kathy Armacost. Now, I know you can't see her, but this is her first Women for Philanthropy event, and it's great to have her and President Armacost on our campus. We really look forward to continuing to work with you, Kathy, and I can't wait till I can introduce you in person to these wonderful women. Welcome to UND. Women for Philanthropy was first created to bring together female leaders like yourselves, providing an avenue to network under the umbrella of giving back to causes important to us. Those things that are important to us are why they change through time, according to those circumstances surrounding us, and those circumstances profoundly affect the choices that we make when giving back. I have found that your why drives you. It drives me. Your why helps lift up and helps keep you striving for more. Your why will connect you with what you are passionate about. We need to continue searching for our purpose, even more probably during these times of uncertainty and turmoil like we face today because of the pandemic. And that pandemic has forced all of us to pivot in what we do. Dennis Waitley said, quote, "To exist just for yourself is meaningless. You can achieve the most satisfaction when you feel related to some greater purpose in life, something greater than yourself," end quote. At the University of North Dakota, one of the ways we did that was to create a scholarship called the Open Door Scholarship. We all have heard stories about the financial hardships created by this pandemic. And at the UND Alumni Association and Foundation, we did not want that to stop anyone who wanted to receive a UND education. So the Open Door Scholarship was created to keep the door open for a UND education and to provide scholarships for students to be able to continue to work toward their futures. Secondly, we already had a fund called the Angel Fund for students struggling to make ends meet. And when COVID-19 hit, it became more important than ever to make those funds available for our students. Our donors stepped in big ways, and more than 200 students have been impacted and allowed the freedom to continue attending UND because of gifts to these two funds. I have a couple of very special people with us here today to talk more about that impact. First of all, we have UND's Vice President of Student Affairs and Diversity, Dr. Kara Hallgren, and Associate Vice President for Student Affairs and Diversity and Associate Dean of Students, Dr. Cassie Gerhardt. Please welcome them. Kara, Cassie.
So I guess it helps to unmute, huh? So thanks, Deanna. A couple of weeks ago, or less than a couple of weeks ago, the Alumni Association and Foundation had the privilege of sharing with the local community about the great things that had happened over the last year. And one of the things that I know you used, Deanna, was a quote by Isaac Newton, who talked about, if I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And when I think about why the Angel Fund matters, that is just foremost in my mind. You said that we all give based on experiences that are important to us, that why factor. Plain and simple, my why factor is having graduated from the University of North Dakota. It was an incredible experience for me. I learned a lot. I had great mentors along the way. And the Angel Fund really has given me an opportunity, I know with others, to give back to an institution and to my mentors that gave me so much along the way. Grand Forks has always been my second home. I'm proud to be here as one of its residents. I'm proud to be at the institution. And again, the Angel Fund is just a way to continue the great work that started long before I got here, and I know will continue long after we're gone. So in light of all of the different gifts that you could make to different organizations, why is it important that the Angel Fund receives your philanthropic gifts now? Well, we know that students need it. This is an opportunity to provide students in real time with the money that we know makes a difference in their being able to stay at school at UND. In just a second, I'm going to ask Cassie to share some of the information about the scholarship and the stories that she's heard from students. But we know that for many of our students that they don't have other resources available to them. So additional loans or scholarships or things like that, they're not going to pay the bills, and some of the things like food and housing and other kinds of critical needs that are instrumental in terms of their being able to stay here at UND. So we appreciate all of the gifts that have come forward for the Angel Fund, and we know that there are great supporters of the institution and our students that are out there. So with that, I would just say thank you to all of you so much for the time and the treasure and the opportunity that you've given for students. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Cassie, and she'll talk a little bit about, like I said, who has been impacted by these gifts and how.
Thanks, Dr. Hallgren. Since we launched the Angel Fund and opened our website open to receive students' requests, we've had 485 students request support. We have been able to honor 213 of those requests. The average grant that students receive has been about $689, and we have given out a little over $146,000 in awards. And when I started thinking about how to share student stories, it really is students' words that I think are most impactful when it comes to what the Angel Fund means. And so in student words, I have a couple stories to share that students have shared with us. One student wrote in and requesting funding from the Angel Fund. I'm a single mom that works in the healthcare field. I'm a senior at UND. Due to COVID, my hours were cut down at work. Not only were my hours cut down, but my daycare hours were also cut. So getting another job is not an option right now. We've lost all extra funding through work for continuing education. And now I just found out that I have reached the max limit for my federal loans. I want to reach my goals by graduating. I've worked really hard to get here. I want to keep striving, not only in my education, but my career goals. I want to show my boys that hard work pays off, and I want us to be financially stable. Another student noted, I have recently become homeless and I'm living on Social Security. I will be finishing classes this spring, but need to complete my internship this fall. I'm needing to find affordable housing and finish up my coursework at the same time. I don't have the financial ability to do both at the same time. So as we think of the theme for today's event, your why matters. The why is the case where we are still receiving requests for support from the Angel Fund. Since August 1st alone, I've received 110 requests for support from the Angel Fund. As it stands now, the Angel Fund resources will be completely depleted when awards are made to the current group of pending requests. And so as I get ready to transition it to Deanne, I let you know that we're getting close to using up the generosity of resources that our alumni and friends and others have shared. And yet in just the last hour, I also received this request from a student. The student wrote, "I've recently been exposed to COVID-19 and I now need to isolate. I'm going to be unable to work for 2 weeks. The money would help me pay for rent, electricity, and groceries. My rent is due the 1st of October, so I'm currently very stressed about money since I can't work." So again, it's the impact of COVID and what it means for students who really are just trying to achieve their academic goals, to work a job to pay for their expenses, and yet the little bit of assistance that we're able to provide through the Angel Fund can make the difference between them staying in school and being successful, or perhaps having to look at other opportunities. And so Deanna, my thanks to you and your team for all the work that you've done to highlight the Angel Fund and to provide the resources that we've been able to deploy to help students be successful at UND. It's all about the why, and it does matter.
It does matter, and it's about the students. So thank you, Cassie and Kara, for sharing those great stories of impact. And most importantly, thank you for caring for our students. You do so much to take care of them and this great university. At this time, I'm very pleased to introduce to you our two panelists, both who have given to the Open Door Scholarship, paving the way for students like Kara and Cassie have just described. Kathy Gershman is a UND Professor Emeritus and co-founder of the Hal and Kathleen Gershman Family Foundation. Wave, Kathy. Hello. And Angie Freeman is on our board of directors. She's a UND Alumni Association and Foundation board member, and also Chief Human Resources Officer at C.H. Robinson Worldwide. Hello, Angie. Good to have both of you here with us. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, tell a little bit in general about their why in philanthropy, and then I've got some questions to ask them. But like Sarah said, please feel free to submit questions and we'll get to those as well. So Kathy, would you start us off, please?
About my why in philanthropy? Well, let's see. Basically, I spent my whole career working with students, and you get to know them if you're lucky, and you're aware very often that, especially in graduate programs, they're working full-time, definitely part-time, often they're raising a family as well, and the stresses on them are tremendous. So I'm just happy to be able to help university students sort of actualize their life goals, to be kind of academic sounding about it, because life is tough enough without having to worry about tuition and groceries and rent and car payments and that kind of thing. So when the COVID hit and we learned about the Angel Fund, we were very happy to be able to help out there. Originally, of course, I think you'll get around to asking us how we started in the area of charitable giving. Do you want me to talk about that for a second?
Sure, that'd be great.
Well, my first experiences with charitable organizations was actually as a recipient, because I got a scholarship when I was in the 8th grade to a parochial school that my family could never have afforded for me to go to. But it was quite a good school, and the scholarship was a tremendous shock and surprise and delight. We kind of had a big family for a policeman, 5 children, 2 parents, not a lot of resources to sort of share. We used up everything we had, basically. So my first experience, I was actually very young, and I went to an absolutely fabulous high school, Fontbonne Academy, Milton, Mass. And to this day, I'm grateful to them for that. Well, it was a parish scholarship. So that's how I started being aware of the benefit to students of a donation. And maybe that lodged in my head, and many years later when I started doing some of that ourselves.
That's great. That is great. Angie, how about you?
Yeah, I'll just start out with a few opening comments, and then if you want me to get into the why right away, I'm happy to. Well, first of all, I want to say I have been looking forward to this for months, and I'm so excited to be here. And while I wish we were all together physically in the same room, I'm just going to imagine that we're all sitting together in a beautiful room, having a lovely lunch, and making conversation and getting to know each other. That being said, the fact we can do this virtually is really cool, and I appreciate the association doing it, because the silver lining for me is I get to do this with Kathy, which is really awesome. She's amazing. And also that we have people outside of Fargo and Grand Forks who otherwise might not have had a chance to participate. So that's pretty cool. As Deanna said, my name is Angie Freeman. I'm a proud third generation UND grad, and I'm just so thrilled to be here with you to talk about this topic, because it's a topic that's really close to my heart. And I know that the fact that all of you are here means it's close to your hearts too. As background, I grew up in Fargo. I live in Minneapolis. I'm married to a UND grad. I'm the lucky mom of 3 great kids, and giving and UND are really important parts of our family life. And we'll talk more about that later. And then finally, in addition to this being an important topic for me personally, it's also very important to me professionally. In my role at C.H. Robinson, in addition to being part of the executive team, I also am the president of our company foundation. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about philanthropy and how philanthropy can make an impact. So I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. Do you want me to just get into the why right away?
Sure. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your why, like Kathy did?
Yeah, so I just love this question, because I think this is the thing that we're all thinking about, and is in the moment of finding your purpose and your why. And we'll talk more in a few minutes about women in philanthropy more specifically, but the research shows, and this has certainly been true for me, that for many women, sharing your time and your wealth is a means to articulate your values out into the world. Many of us see giving as an extension of ourselves. And so for me, giving back, both my time and my treasure, has really been about making an impact in my communities, which in turn, I believe, impacts my family. And it also comes from, and I hear this from Kathy too, like this very deep sense of gratitude for all the opportunities I've been given in life. And while it's certainly not been perfect, I recognize I've been really fortunate, and that I've had a lot of advantages that many other people may not have had. So because of that, an important part of my purpose is what I call reaching out and lifting up. The majority of giving in our family, this is something that's really important to my husband, Russ, as well, has been focused on education and children and opportunity. And over, I think we can all say that education is the most important tool to advancing the life of a person, of their family, and of communities overall. It has this amazing multiplier effect. And so if I could, I'd like everybody on this call to just take a moment to think about that in your own life. Reflect on how at key moments in your life as a child or as a young adult, someone outside your family cared enough to take some time to help teach you something, make you stronger, lift you up, give you confidence or an opportunity. And for me, that was often teachers or coaches or professors at UND. They encouraged me. They helped me see something in myself that perhaps I hadn't recognized. They stretched me. They pushed me to lean in. And they also gave me feedback when I needed it. And I firmly believe that UND changed the trajectory of my life, and for many people in my family, their lives as well. And so that is my why. It's to reach out and lift up and help ensure that the opportunities and the education that I received are available to as many young people as possible, because I truly believe that the young people in this country are our nation's greatest resource.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Wonderful. When you were making your comments, Angie, it made me think of a quote by Maya Angelou. And I think most of you would be familiar with her, and just writes beautifully, speaks beautifully. One of her shortest quotes, I think, is when you learn, teach, and when you get, give.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And you mentioned the teaching part. And Kathy, I know that maybe your first philanthropic gifts was actually philanthropic work when you were right out of college, if I'm remembering correctly. Did you go to the Peace Corps?
Oh.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
if memory serves, yes,
talk about that, because that's you were giving and you were teaching at that point when maybe you didn't have much to give.
I actually have blanked on that for a moment. May I add to Maya Angelou's quote, if I dare?
Yes.
And when you teach, you learn.
Yes.
When you teach, you actually learn more when you're teaching something than you ever did as a student trying to learn it.
I agree.
Out of some sense of insecurity or curiosity. I think if you're lucky enough to get paid just to be curious, as I was for 30 years. So the Peace Corps. Well, back in the late 60s, it was, I don't know, it just appealed to me. I needed to have a change. Peace Corps was a great place. This is putting it very selfishly, actually. It was a good place to learn a new language, learn a new culture, go abroad, meet new people. I thought, maybe if I go to, if I want to meet a nice Jewish boy from Grand Forks, North Dakota, I should go to Bolivia. That's a good idea. So anyway, of course, I met this fine young man there. We didn't work together, but we did work hard. We were trained for 3 months to do public health. We had to learn how to give skin tests. They sent us to an area that was infected with tuberculosis. Hal and I always say we got far more out of it than we gave. I'm sure of that. It was a wonderful experience. Like any philanthropy, really, it's more rewarding than it is. You never know exactly the impact you have. I lived in a little village for 2 years. Everybody did. I was on my own. Most people were. And we hoped when we finished 2 years that there was less tuberculosis than when we started. But I would say the Peace Corps was a great opportunity to work for other people and to do a little good when your own resources were very limited. It changed my life, needless to say. Still married to that fine young man, and we have good friends and lots of memories from that time. But yeah, I can't actually recall being motivated to do good so much as in my early 20s needing to have a major change. But of course, education's about that too. So it's all part of the same thing. If you can help give students that opportunity to grow and change, they don't need to go to South America to do that, actually.
It's a good experience, though.
Oh, yeah.
Once we can get the study abroad program back after the pandemic. Yes. So, Angie, you had mentioned that you and your husband talk about where you want to give, and how do you involve your children in that as well? And how are you training them or teaching them about philanthropy? What are some of the conversations you have as a couple and as a family?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'd preface it with saying kind of where I started, which is this notion of giving back and helping others and supporting your community is just core to what we believe as a family and a really important part of our family life. And so we started those conversations really young. And I think, like anything that we all try to teach our children, it starts with modeling the behavior, right, and setting the example. We've always talked about it with our kids from a very early age and why it's important. And the thing is that kids are naturally inclined to want to help others. I mean, there's some great research that shows that children as young as 2 will proactively reach out to help somebody without being asked. So it's part of who we are as human beings is to want to help. So, it was talking a lot about it at the dinner table, modeling it. Our kids saw, as I saw with my parents and my husband saw with his parents, us all doing things in the community and serving on boards and volunteering. And then we tried to do some things and specifically to help make it really fun and engaging for our kids. So we would choose activities that we thought would be more fun for them, like going on charity walks in costumes or in fun locations like the Mall of America, which was exciting to them. We did things like we participated in building little libraries to help promote literacy in lower income neighborhoods, and just taking the kids in those neighborhoods to see it look a little different than where they grew up made a big impact. one of the things my kids still talk about is another thing we did along those lines is we participated in an event to make sandwiches that are distributed every night to people living on the streets of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we had a contest to see how many sandwiches we could make. And so with a group of other people in an afternoon, we made 100,000 sandwiches, if you can imagine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was crazy. So we tried to choose things that they would really enjoy and that they could do and be hands-on. We also tried to pick things that would feel real to them and really relevant to their lives. So I'm sure many people have done things like this, but through our church, we would adopt a family at Christmas, and we would get the list of things that those kids would like for Christmas that otherwise they may not get. And we take our kids shopping to buy those things. And it was pretty eye-opening for those kids, not only to see some toys on the list, but things like socks and underwear that otherwise they might not have. I think that really helped open up their eyes. So, you know, in line with that, I think it comes from cultivating this sense of gratitude for the blessings that your family enjoys. I think it comes from making sure your kids are aware of the world around them and places like Bolivia and other parts of the world, or even in their city where people might be struggling. And then really that there are challenges and adversities that others are facing that they have not, and to be really empathetic to that building of empathy. As their kids have gotten older, now they're high schoolers and in college, we're doing more things to talk about where we choose to give as a family. That's been important to us. So that our kids feel like they have some say in that and a sense of agency in those decisions, and also feel really invested in the outcomes. And I need to do a mom brag for a second. So, you know, I think it's working. I'm really pleased to share that my 2 older kids lettered in high school in community service, which is a cool thing that our high school does and more schools are doing, that they could earn from contributing a large number of hours to volunteering. And my 3rd child is well on her way to doing the same, getting her community service letter. So again, it's been an important part of our family life and what binds us together.
I love that. A community service letter. I've never heard of that. That is fantastic. Now, before I turn to Kathy, just a reminder, if you have a question for these 2 wonderful ladies, go ahead and hit the Q&A button, type your question in there. So Kathy, how about you and Hal? How do you go about deciding where you want your philanthropy, what you want your philanthropy to impact? And then you have a child, but you also have grandchildren. And so what's the transition you've been making there as you're bringing them all together?
Yeah, that's actually been very interesting. Our daughter has been, she's a member of our board, as is her husband, and it's a 5-member board. So she and Scott, her husband, have the opportunity to decide a certain percentage every year of what we are going to be able to give from the foundation funds that year. And that's been kind of interesting because her interests are, they're not the same as ours, although they obviously fall under the nonprofit umbrella. She might have a homeless shelter or a nonprofit theater company or a women's fund. She's a very big feminist. So that's been kind of interesting. We haven't traditionally, Hal and I, funded those things, but she's involved in all the decisions of every grant that we do fill. And so I don't know how, I forget what I was going to say. I wanted to mention that the grandchildren, the past year, they're only 10 and 7, but they were able to sit down with their parents and talk about where they would like to donate some money if they could, and they wanted to donate to the homeless. Well, in Los Angeles, of course, the homeless is a serious problem, and so I think they enjoyed doing that, and I think they've started training their own children into that tradition, if I may say so. So, yeah, I think Leonora, our daughter, learned about giving probably as much from her grandmother as her parents, because her grandmother was very active in philanthropic areas, a Red Cross volunteer for years, and that sort of thing, and always having fundraising dinners at her house. My mother-in-law famously stood up in the audience of the fire hall many years ago and said, "Everybody to my place for dinner." But she was an extremely giving and warm person. And I think, I'd like to think Leonora learned some of that from her too.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I think back to when was my first acknowledgement or memory of what it meant to give back. And I always think of my father putting an envelope in the offering plate that was being passed around. But when I asked him about it, he's like, "Oh, we just don't talk about that." The very Norwegian stoic, we don't talk about it. And this is wonderful to hear how it has evolved and how you've taken this to other levels, whether it's your children or your grandchildren. And then if you model it, that's so true. I remember my father, he would go preach at the nursing homes, and we had to go sing and play the piano and do all this stuff with him and with my grandmother. And when my kids started coming along, we did that, and we'd all complain about it. And it's so fun to look back now as my oldest grandchildren and oldest daughter, they would go into the nursing homes in their community and sing and play games, and just not the same thing, but it was like, this is something important, so that you may not even know how you're teaching your children and grandchildren. Yeah, Kathy.
That's true. And also another point that you're making, Deanna, is you don't have to write a check.
That's true.
To make a difference.
Yes,
if
absolutely.
You can sing and get yourself to a nursing home, as we used to call them, that is such a gift for someone. For that hour or two that afternoon, they talk about it afterwards, that they still remember it. I mean, you can do a lot with what you have. It isn't that, oh, I don't have any extra this year to give. You have to give because you have time.
Yes, and time is a great gift.
Yeah.
Great gift. And Angie, I think you hit on that with the community service letter that your children earned.
Yeah, we call that being a time philanthropist at our house.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really meaningful way. And even when you get to a stage in life where you are able to give more financially, I still think that time is such an essential piece, that time and talent, right, of what we can all give. I think it's so interesting, Kathy, this conversation about this, because just in preparation for this, I was thinking a lot about my own childhood and my grandparents and sort of how that looked. And, I think in previous generations, it just was more the case that women did not have as much input into the family finances, right, in the household. And so what a lot of women did instead of writing checks is they would be time philanthropists. I know that was the case for my mother when she started out. There wasn't a lot of extra money to give, but she could give her time, and then over time built up to that. And I just think that's a really important part of the full picture of how we can give back.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So true. So true. When I think back to the church again, my mother started quilting for the church. You give away quilts, whether it was locally or nationally, and she still quilts to this day. It's the one thing she does for the church, nothing for us, but it's always you give it to the church. It's like she puts in a lot of hours. So that time philanthropy, I like that. So Angie, you mentioned that you're president of the company's foundation. In addition to your human resources executive role, you must spend a lot of time on this in your professional life as well. How have you seen philanthropy change during your time at the company? And then I'd like to hear from you if you think there's a generational shift as well. Do we all look at philanthropy a little different?
Yeah, I love this topic, obviously. And there's not only some generational differences, although maybe fewer than we think, but there's also certainly some gender differences, which I think are relevant. And I'll preface this by saying I think it's always really dangerous to overly generalize, right? We're talking about millions of people, right? So we can't be too precise. There's always exceptions. But the data shows there truly are some both generational and gender differences in the way people approach giving. And there's been some really interesting research done by organizations like Fidelity and Boston Consulting Group and some other organizations that kind of speak to this. And the backdrop is what we were just talking about, that, in the last 50 years, there's been a significant change in our country in how women participate in the workforce and the wealth that's held by women. So back in 1970, I think it was something like 42% of women were in the workforce. And today that's more like 62, 63%. If you narrow the band and you just look at women between 25 and 55, kind of in their prime working age, that's like 77%. So that's a huge societal difference. And then also wealth. It's estimated that about 40 to 45% of wealth in the US is held by women. So a big sea change from the past when women didn't have as much influence. And that has had a really big impact in giving and the causes to which giving happens. Today, you know, what we see from millennials is, well, in the past, women felt like, you know, they maybe it was more of a joint decision or they didn't have as much input. Today, 70% of millennial women, so that's women born between 1980 and 95, say that they are the primary decision maker in their financial decisions. And that compares to boomer women, which is more like 40%. So that's a generational shift we're seeing. Specific to gender and giving, here's the short answer. Women give more frequently than men, and they give more than their male counterparts. In a typical year, about 55% of women will give at least once, and that's about 40% for men. It also really impacts household decisions for giving. So the stats are that in a family, if the wife's income goes up $10,000, family giving for that household will go up 5%. If the husband's income goes up $10,000, the family giving will go up 3%. So there is a difference there. And that's not neither good or bad. It's just different in the way that we look at things. So women give more frequently and they give at a higher amount. And in addition to that sort of different behavior, there's also significant differences that women talk about. And that's why I think this event is so perfect and amazing. Women have, I love this phrase, a heart-first approach to giving. For 2/3 of women, they say giving is an action that's prompted by empathy. Well, for men, that's a lower percentage. Majority of women say that they are intrinsically motivated to give, that they see giving as an extension of themselves and a way for them to make an impact on their communities and the world around them. And that it is really important for many women when they give to feel emotionally connected to the cause and to feel engaged with the cause, to be connected to it. Now, that does not mean that women are not using their heads in these decisions and only their hearts. In fact, the opposite is true. Women are more likely to consult experts and use data in making their giving decisions, and they're more likely to be really clear about the outcome they want to see as a result of their gifts. And then the final difference is that women tend to give more collectively. We're more drawn to giving together in groups, like giving circles or through events and doing things together as part of our more, collaborative ways of operating. So that's gender. So what we see generationally is younger women and older women tend to have a lot of the same motivations to give, but younger women, millennials, and now Gen Zs, are even more drawn to having a direct impact and seeing that impact on their gifts. They want to be really hands-on and touch it and see it and feel it and see the impact. They also are more likely to give through kind of newer ways of giving, like point of sale giving, or buying products from a socially conscious company, or participating like crowdfunding or online things like a Kickstarter. It's just something that's more prone for them. They also tell us, millennial women, that they really enjoy giving being part of their whole social world. They want to thread it through everything that they do, and they see giving as a way to kind of really deepen those meaningful relationships, kind of like we're all doing right now, talking about why this is important to us. So what does that all mean? What are the takeaways? The takeaways for me are exactly what we're talking about. It's really important to discover your why, to ensure that you're giving to something that aligns with your values, the way you want to live your life, what matters to you, and to make an impact, that you feel emotionally connected, engaged with your cause. Second is that we all as women have a really powerful opportunity to drive really important change in the world in our communities, that together we can make a really big impact. And it's just part of who we are. And then finally, let's embrace the opportunity to do these things together. Together, we can make a bigger impact.
That is fabulous information, Angie. I know I have a number of colleagues on here, but you need to come talk to our development team and go through some of those too, because it's so true. We talk about, especially when you look at the boomers, many times it's the man at the table first. And oftentimes we have to ask, and that's where all of this started for me. It's like, why aren't women talking about this more? Why aren't we engaging more? Why can we not get comfortable with giving? So thank you for that great information. Yes, Kathy.
I want if Angie agrees, and you, Deanna, that the younger generation too is a little more inclined in the past year or two to give to their favorite political candidates in a way that, I mean, they're so active politically in the past couple of years that you see donations from them for $5 and $10 to candidates that they wouldn't bother giving maybe to United Way. And it's satisfying a passion there for change, I think, that one wonders in 6 months what they'll do with that passion, because some things will be resolved. Not to go there at all, but yeah, that was so fascinating, Angie. I learned a lot from you right there.
Well, I completely agree with you on the political giving too. And I think part of it is for political giving and giving to more philanthropic causes. I think we've seen this democratization, small d, democratization of giving, where it used to be you need to be invited to a big fancy fundraiser or a charity event and write a bigger check. And now it's so much easier for people to do that $5 or $10 gift and feel like I'm doing something right now. And I have access to do that and make my impact.
Yes, that's so well put. The field of nonprofit fundraising has gotten very sophisticated, I think, in the past 10 or 15 years. And the solicitations by mail have gotten very targeted. They know who you are. They know that you may be interested in this, and they know that you may have $10. It's very, very interesting. I think you're so right. Years ago, it was a question of writing a huge check, getting a dress, getting dressed up, getting a babysitter. That's all changed, hasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
It definitely has. So we have a question that's come in on our Q&A. It says, thank you for your inspiring stories. Can you speak to the pros and cons of giving anonymously versus in your family's name? I'm very interested in how recipients feel with gifts they receive, which probably range from gratitude to feeling indebted. I appreciate your thoughts. Kathy, you want to go first?
Well, I'll give it a shot. I guess there are pros and cons of donating anonymously. If you don't, as a donor, if you donate anonymously, you cut off the opportunity for other nonprofits to see your name and add it to their list. So then the mail and the solicitations are not increased. I think people have various reasons for wanting not to have their name out there as donors, depending maybe on the size of the donation. The pros there are very few pros for the nonprofit, because you need donors to serve as an example to other people out there. And so when you come to the point where you let your name use, because every solicitation says, how do you want to be recognized or not? Well, if you let yourself be recognized, you're doing a favor to the university or any nonprofit who can say, be one of a crowd, be one of these other people who feel proud enough about this donation that they're going to let us use their name. So there are both, but from the standpoint of the university or the nonprofit, just donate. You want to use your name or not, we're happy to get the fund. So
that's true.
Right?
Angie?
I'm with Kathy. I have mixed feelings on this. My Norwegian self, kind of like your dad, Deanna, feels like, ooh, it does feel sometimes like you shouldn't be doing this for attention or praise. You should be doing it because it's a good thing to do. But to that point about giving collectively, I do think there is some power in people knowing that each other have done something, and you kind of bring people along with you, right? So everybody has to find their own place in that. Yes, yeah. An interesting analog for me is as a company, for a long time when C.H. Robinson would give, we were really quiet about it. And it was that same sort of Midwestern humble attitude of, we don't do this to get PR, we do this because it's the right thing to do. And what we realized is we were missing an opportunity for our employees to feel really proud about the fact that they worked for a company that was doing so many good things in the community, and it was a benefit to them. Now, I'm not sure how that fits exactly with personal giving, but I do think there's lots of different angles to take on this, but that ultimately people just have to find their own way and what feels right to them.
Absolutely. And great point on the company side too. That's very interesting. And what leadership's position may be is different than maybe what the collective we of the organization really would like to see. So here's another question that came in. What type of recognition do you like to receive? And do you have a favorite thank you story?
Well, I didn't grow up in the Midwest, but I must have adopted a lot of their values, because recognition makes me very uncomfortable. That's not the point, is it? You know, it's just like, well, let's not go there. Let's just do what you can with the donation. But as I said, you know, it's helpful to the organization if they have a list of donors. So my favorite type of acknowledgement, of course, without question, is a note from a student. It's just by a mile, it makes your day. It's maybe 4 sentences, but you're like, oh, they took the time, and it's a real person, and it's a real life, and my heavens, this is a fantastic. So I love that. I don't need my name on any list, but the notes from the students, I'm going to say I love. And in the past, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a flood thing, but some school in Grand Forks sent me a long collection of thank you notes. I think it was a 3rd grade or something. I still have it. Dear Mrs. Gershman. I'm not looking for credit, but I think we funded a bus ride to a movie, and some kids movie. And I forgot we did that so long ago. Every single kid in the 3rd or 4th grade wrote us a note in their little handwriting. It's so darling and very mean. It makes you want to give again.
Yep.
That's beautiful. Angie, how about you?
Yeah, totally agree. You know, the most meaningful things are when you find out that you changed a life or helped somebody or made an impact. Those personal stories or personal letters are by far the most meaningful. A memorable thank you story for me, and this was on the C.H. Robinson side, not something I did personally, but we, a couple of years ago, sort of on a whim, got a phone call that some of the veterans' homes here in Minneapolis, their furnaces had been rent tagged, and we're heading into winter, and you certainly can't have a furnace. And so it was kind of outside our normal process, but we decided just to write some checks to get them new furnaces. And oftentimes in corporate philanthropy, you know, there's a process and you do these things, and then later you hear back from the organization. They're always very thankful. But I think we mailed the check, and then the next day I got a phone call, and the person who ran those homes for veterans was crying and said, "You have no idea what this means, that we will know we don't have to worry about turning these guys who've served our country out into the street, and they will have heat. And we just didn't know where that next dollar was going to come from." And that, to me, I mean, I started crying. I mean, you just realize that something that felt like, okay, let's just do this, really unbelievably impacted people's lives. And I, you know, Open Door and Angel Fund, to me, exact same thing, right? That's something that maybe for some of us, we can do pretty easily. Even if it's a small amount, will go a long way to getting people over this hump of whatever adversity they're facing right now. And if you could just get them through that, they're going to do amazing things.
That's so true. So true. Kathy, maybe if you have a quick minute on, you know, businesses, and you and Hal have run a number of businesses, you always have a strategic plan or a roadmap for growth and success. Do you have a strategic plan for your family foundation?
Well, not really. I think our plan is to involve our daughter and her family more and more as time goes by, number one. Number two, we're going to address our mission statement with a little bit more focus, because now it is so broad. It's basically, let's see, it says something about helping improve the quality of life in any kind of religious or scientific or educational manner possible. Well, we give so much more to the arts than anything else that we need to redo that mission statement so that that's actually more of a target. Although word seems to be out, because we do get a lot of applications along those lines. So as far as a formal strategic plan, you know, the foundation board is so tiny. There's only 5 of us. And I remember when your great speaker 2-3 years ago was here from Ralph Engelsted's daughter, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Chris McGarry.
That's right, Chris McGarry. So I asked Chris McGarry that very question because I thought, well, I'm going to learn a thing or two about that specific issue. And she said, no, we just do it as the issue arrives. I said, what is your long-term strategic plan and how do you activate it? And she said, no, it's just the four of us and we just make the changes as we want. I thought, okay, it's good enough for the Inglesteds. It's good enough for us. But seriously, you know, we do look at the future very seriously, and involving the Pitts family, which is my daughter's married name, is important to us, and it needs to happen more and more. So, yeah, there's that. That's happening.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. So we've got a couple comments here. I feel like I should read these. I can't believe it, but our time is going away very quickly here. One individual asked if we plan on continuing our virtual events like this. I truly enjoyed being able to participate from Colorado. That's been one of the fun things about this, right? Like Angie said, it's not just Fargo and Grand Forks. And yes, we will. I think this has been wonderful to have these two women together and all of you from all over the country. We want to look at how we can continue to do this. And then this one for you, Angie, I really appreciate the opportunity to watch this today. I am the Devils Lake Public Schools Development Fund Coordinator, and the class of '69 just raised $5,000 for scholarships. Do you know who this is, Angie? They challenged other classes to do the same. Just wanted to do a shout out and thank you. P.S. Angie and I went to Business Challenge together in high school. Laura Olson Przinski, UND, 1990.
Hi, Laura. That is great.
That's fun. And then
Really fun.
we have, Angie, this question came in for you. Will you please share the source of your research stats on women in philanthropy? So if you get that to Brooke, she can send it out with our follow-up. That would be great.
Happy to.
Here's another one. The idea of group giving really resonates with me. What type of targeted and group campaigns have been most successful for either one of you in getting attention of like minds and givers in a world where our social media channels are saturated? Email inboxes are full and phone calls are screened.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know.
It is.
It's a very tough one.
Yeah, I think this is an area that we can think about. I mean, we're all here together on this call, right? And we're obviously united in our interest in women in philanthropy and making an impact. So we should maybe as a group be thinking about that. I think Laura's example of doing something as a class, that's a group that has a common core and a mission and doing something together. You're hitting on exactly which is part of the problem, is sort of the breaking through the clutter. And clutter is a bad word, because these are all amazing causes, but they're just so much right now. And I think that brings it back to why you really have to find your why, what matters to you. And then if you have others who are like-minded, do it together. And I think it becomes really meaningful that way. But it's a tough challenge. I don't know, Deanna, at the association, you guys are probably thinking about that all the time.
We are.
It's a tough one. One thing that we found I think useful is to establish a fund and offer to match any other donation up to a certain amount. And that's an old, I'll call it a tactic, but it's an old course of action that has proved very useful to many nonprofits, is to say, I will give $100, but I'll match any other donation up to a certain amount. We've done that. I also was on a board many years ago, a statewide board. I was so amazed at how they could target their print materials according to whether the person had donated before. So no, there wasn't one blanket letter that went out to everybody. It was, Deanna, thank you for your donation last year of $100. This year, can you give $125? And it was actually a very, I don't think that either, that's very unusual, but it is very effective.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Great point. So Kathy, I have a hi to Kathy from Jane Schreck, Bismarck State College.
Oh,
Thank you from a happy student, much enriched by my classes with Dr. Gershman.
Jane, thank you.
And I have something I want to read from one of our students here, but before I do that, Kathy, Angie, any closing comments that you'd want to make before I close us out for this afternoon?
I'll just say quickly, thank you for the invitation. I think you do a marvelous job. Congratulations on your fundraising year. Just this past year, you've done a superb job, and it's a gargantuan job. But you don't have to be on campus more than 2 minutes to see some of the major efforts that are coming to fruition thanks to your work. And I want to thank you. Thanks for the invitation. It was fun.
This is fun. Thank you. Angie?
Yes, thank you. This is a fantastic experience. I feel compelled to close with kind of my big close on the pitch here for UND because, as I said, it's so close to my heart. So please bear with me on that. But I really see UND as one of the most impactful places to give for several reasons. And it involves both my head and my heart. From my head, when I think about investing in the community, I see a triple benefit in investing in a place like UND. Direct impact. I can make an impact on somebody's life right here, right now, when they need it, and I can see that, and I can help that person get through whatever adversity and have a better future. Angel Fund and Open Door, perfect examples of that. I can also have impact at scale. University impacts a lot of students, many of their families, across a wide swath of people, and by giving the university, I can have that impact across big groups of people that impacts their lives and their futures. And then third, this kind of magical multiplier effect of what a robust university does for the surrounding community and state and regional economy by helping to create a better way of life that goes beyond the students, but helps drive a more robust, sustainable, healthy economy. And so when I think about my giving and why UND, it's the fact that I can provide this triple benefit is very powerful to me. And that combined with the personal impact that UND has had on me and my family, that seals the deal for me.
Beautiful.
So thanks everybody, and best of luck to you all. It was really fun.
Thank you. So I have a story here that the student, I know her. She typed in, she's participating in our call today. She said, as a student at UND, I have been supported through scholarships from our community and alums. Both of my parents were diagnosed with cancer, and my dad lost his job when I started college. Thank you for your endless generosity, but also putting forth the effort to meet students. I began my role as a peer advisor for UND National Scholarships. This last week, one of my advisees received the Angel Fund Scholarship. We both cried. Thank you a million times over. I can't wait to be an alum. So there's immediate impact for you too. Yeah. Isn't that beautiful? So typically we would at this point say, would you consider making a gift to the Women's Philanthropy Fund? But today we are saying, would you consider making a gift to an Open Door Scholarship to continue on this tradition, that multiplier effect that Angie talks about? And if you would be interested in participating, you can just go to undalumni.org/open door. And it's just a way to help those students who want to pursue a UND education, like so many of you on this call have, that they still have that opportunity. And as we've talked about, philanthropy isn't just about writing a check, right? We all make a difference in the lives of others. And sometimes, and both these women have talked about it, what seems like a simple gesture, a simple gift, a simple time of philanthropy, it can make a huge difference, a significant difference in someone else's life. So Kathy and Angie, we really appreciate you sharing those stories with us. And although we still can't have in-person events, we do have a couple upcoming events I want you to remind you about. Wake Up to UND, where you'll get to hear from President Armacost, and Mayor Buczynski is going to be held live stream on UND's Facebook page, September 29th at 8 a.m. So tune in for that. And then of course we have our virtual homecoming activities. Homecoming at home is what we're calling it this year, the week of October 5th through the 9th. So again, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Angie. Thank you to all of you who participated. And just a little reminder for all of us today. Remember to have compassion, show kindness, take care of yourselves, and take care of those around you. Thank you.